Hi, this is Dr. LaBarbera, and this is my daily blog, so it has become. Uh, I happened to have a bright individual I was talking to and said, well, what should I talk on my blog about today? And I thought he'd say, well, like, what are the symptoms of ADD? Or, you know, uh, what is a panic attack? But instead, he comes up with this question, this highbrow question. Uh, what do you think about the book Reinventing the Sacred by a man named Kaufman? Not the Nietzsche scholar Kaufman, but what he calls a complexity theorist. Um, okay, reinventing the sacredness in everyday life. That's not an area I know a whole lot, but my thoughts immediately turn to the transcendentalists in our own country in Europe. Thoreau, Whitman, here, Melville, Hawthorne, and in Europe, people like Rudolf Steiner, who tried to find, and Emerson, of course, who tried to counter the mechanistic. It's somewhat of a romantic style of thinking, but it also is one which celebrates nature and the divinity and the unity within nature, and it's an anti-mechanistic view, a view that mechanistic thinking is too reductionist to fully comprehend the interrelatedness and sort of the cosmic unity, if you will, of the world. But that's what the transcendentalists tried to do. They were Moby Dick, Thoreau, Emerson talking about the oversoul, Rudolf Steiner talking about nature and its inherent unity and our oneness with nature. So what do I think of that style of thinking? I think it's important. I think a lot of people have lost it, or it's when people do think in that style of thinking, it's so corrupted and it's so dumbed down into a sort of mysticism or sort of a new ageism that it loses any intellectual credibility. How is it manifested today? It was sort of a 60s style of thinking. You would think, well, a tribal or more sense of interrelatedness between people, or Buddhist 60s, as opposed to the more mechanistic thinking before and after. Humanities are so important. I mean, a lot of young people go into school with some hope of training, and they miss the idea that humanities, although wealthier and more affluent people do still encourage their kids to study humanities or liberal arts as a way of comprehending a broad range of material and getting a more holistic style of thinking that counters a sort of scientific, the sort of scientific reductionism that was very strong prior to the transcendentalists. After the Industrial Revolution, that was parodied in, Robert Louis Stevenson's work and, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the evils of science. But I think it's important to range in that period, even for scientists, to range in that sort of broader transcendental sense of divinity in the world. I mean, if you're a true skeptic, you tend to poo-poo that, although a lot of true skeptics eventually break through the other side and become rather holistic in their thinking. Scientists, and sometimes it's sort of sad because scientists will become so, like Newton with his things on alchemy, or Aldous Huxley with his very insightful writing, studying things like, laying hands on people as a form of healing. But that style of thinking is very important. You tend to see it as a literary movement, certain more religiously oriented spheres. So it's often presents as reaction after times of intense technological growth, which we are now after the 90s with computers, and we're maybe in a bit of a reaction to that. But anyway, those are my off-the-cuff comments to a question posed by a very bright individual, and I don't know if it makes sense or not, but thank you.